Picture this. It's the summer of 1947, and the vast, desolate expanse of the New Mexico desert stretches out under a canopy of stars. The air is still, the night quiet, save for the distant cry of a coyote. In this remote corner of the world, near the small town of Roswell, something extraordinary is about to unfold. Not one, but three unidentified flying objects crashing from the heavens, their debris scattering across the sands and igniting a firestorm of speculation that burns brightly even toddy. To fully grasp the Roswell incident, we need to travel back to the late 1940s, a time when the world was teetering on the edge of transformation. The Second World War had just ended, leaving behind a landscape of both devastation and innovation. The United States and the Soviet Union were locking horns in the opening act of the Cold War, a shadowy contest of espionage, technology, and power. The atomic age had dawned with the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and humanity was grappling with the dual promise and peril of nuclear energy. Amid this tension, the skies were alive with new possibilities. Jet aircraft streaked through the air, experimental balloons drifted high above, and secret projects unfolded behind closed doors. But it wasn't just military technology capturing attention. The public was enthralled by the idea of visitors from beyond our planet. Science fiction was booming, with pulp magazines and early films like The Day the Earth Stood Still, feeding a growing fascination with extraterrestrial life. Into this heady mix came a pivotal moment. On June 24, 1947, a pilot named Kenneth Arnold spotted 9 crescent-shaped objects zipping past Mount Rainier in Washington state at speeds he estimated at over 1,200 miles per hour. He described their motion as like saucers skipping on water, and with that, the term flying saucer was born. Newspapers splashed the story across front pages, and suddenly, people everywhere were scanning the heavens, reporting strange lights and shapes in the sky. It was a cultural tipping point, and it set the stage for what was about to happen in Roswell just weeks later. Now, let's zero in on the main event. In early July 1947, a rancher named William Mack Brazel was tending to his sheep northwest of Roswell, New Mexico, after a fierce thunderstorm rattled the region. As he rode across his property, he stumbled upon something bizarre. Debris strewn across the desert floor, glinting in the harsh sunlight. This wasn't the usual litter of a storm. It was a collection of strange materials, thin, metallic foil that sprang back into shape when crumpled, rubber-like strips and lightweight beams etched with what some later called hieroglyphic-like symbols. Brazel, a practical man not given to wild imaginings, was stumped. He gathered some of the wreckage and, a few days later, brought it into Roswell to show the sheriff, George Wilcox. Sensing something unusual, Wilcox alerted the nearby Roswell Army Airfield, home to the 509th Bomb Group, the only unit in the world at that time equipped to drop atomic bombs. The military sprang into action. On July 8, 1947, the base's public information officer, Lieutenant Walter Haut, issued a press release that would send shockwaves around the globe. Authorized by Colonel William Blanchard, the statement read, "The many rumors regarding the flying disc became a reality yesterday when the intelligence office of the 509th Bomb Group of the 8th Air Force, Roswell Army Airfield, was fortunate enough to gain possession of a disc through the cooperation of one of the." The news hit like a thunderclap. Headlines screamed, "RAF captures flying saucer on ranch in Roswell region." And for a fleeting moment, it seemed the world had proof of extraterrestrial visitors. But the story didn't hold. Within 24 hours, the military backtracked with a speed that only deepened the mystery. On July 9th, Brigadier General Roger Ramey, commander of the 8th Air Force, held a press conference in Fort Worth, Texas, where the debris had been flown for analysis. Flanked by Major Jesse Marcel, the intelligence officer who had first examined the wreckage, Ramey declared that the flying disc was nothing more than a weather balloon, a mundane explanation that clashed starkly with the initial excitement. Photographs showed Marcel posing with bits of foil and rubber, materials that looked disappointingly ordinary. The press release was reframed as a mistake, a case of overzealous reporting, and the public was urged to move on. Yet, the swift reversal raised eyebrows. Why had a seasoned military outfit like the 509th, with its elite status and rigorous protocols, jumped to such an extraordinary conclusion only to retract it so hastily? And why did Marcel, a trained officer familiar with aircraft and balloons, later insist that what he handled was no weather balloon? "It was not anything from this earth, that I'm quite sure of," he said in a 1979 interview. "It wouldn't burn. It was very light, like balsa wood, but it wasn't wood." The official story was meant to close the book, but instead, it flung the door wide open to questions that refused to be silenced. Here's where the plot thickens. What if the Roswell incident wasn't about a single crash, but three? The standard narrative centers on Brazel's ranch, but whispers from the time, and accounts that surfaced later, suggest a more complex event involving multiple UFOs plummeting to Earth that night. Imagine the scene: a stormy sky lit by flashes of lightning, and amid the chaos, three glowing objects, discs, orbs, or crafts of unknown design, streaking downward, their trajectories diverging as they crash across the Roswell landscape. One lands on Brazel's property, scattering the debris he'd find days later. Another slams into a site miles away, perhaps near the town of Corona, or the so-called D. Proctor site, named after a young witness we'll meet soon. A third could have come down in a remote stretch of desert, its remains quickly swallowed by military secrecy. Supporting this idea are early reports from civilians who claim to have seen multiple objects in the sky on or around July 2nd. Dan and Anna Wilmot, a Roswell couple, were sitting on their porch that evening when they spotted a large, glowing oval zipping overhead, moving faster than any plane they'd ever seen. It was like two saucers put together, Dan later told reporters. Days later, a farmer named William Woody and his father watched a fiery object plummet north of Roswell, only to be turned back by soldiers when they tried to investigate. Even an archaeologist, Dr. W. Curry Holden, reportedly stumbled upon a crashed craft with strange occupants while on a dig in the area, though his tale remains disputed. These accounts hint at a broader incident, one too big for a single weather balloon to explain. Could three UFOs, perhaps a fleet, a scouting party, or crafts caught in some cosmic mishap, have met their end in the New Mexico desert, their secrets scattered across multiple sites? The voices of those who were there bring this mystery to life, painting a picture that defies the official line. Major Jesse Marcel remains a cornerstone of the Roswell story. As the first military man on the scene, he was adamant that the debris was extraordinary. "You could take a piece of that metal and wad it up in your hands, and it would unfold itself," he recalled. "It was so thin, yet you couldn't cut it or break it." His conviction, shared decades later when he broke his silence, fueled speculation that the military was hiding something big. Then there's Glenn Dennis, a mortician at Ballard Funeral Home in Roswell. On the day of the crash, Dennis received a call from the base asking about small, hermetically sealed caskets and how to preserve bodies exposed to the elements. Later, he met a nurse friend at the base who was visibly shaken, claiming she'd assisted in autopsies on little people with large heads, big eyes, and grayish skin. She sketched what she saw on a napkin, only to vanish from Dennis's life soon after. Transferred, he was told, or perhaps silenced. Another witness, Sergeant Melvin E. Brown, confided to his family years later that he'd guarded a truck carrying bodies from the crash site. "They weren't human," his daughter Beverly Bean quoted him as saying. "They were small, with big heads and eyes like you wouldn't believe." Civilian accounts add to the chorus. Families reported seeing military convoys hauling large, tarp-covered objects through town, while others spoke of strange lights or explosions in the night. One chilling tale comes from D. Proctor, a boy who, with his mother, allegedly saw a craft and its occupants up close at a second sight. These testimonies, though varied and sometimes secondhand, weave a tapestry of an event far grander and stranger than a downed balloon. The military's response only deepened the intrigue. Within hours of Brazel's report, soldiers from Roswell Army Airfield descended on the ranch, cordoning off the area and scouring the land for every scrap of debris. Witnesses described a heavy presence, trucks, jeeps, and armed guards, suggesting a recovery operation on a massive scale. Mac Brazel himself was taken into custody for several days, emerging tight-lipped and unwilling to discuss what he'd seen, leading some to believe he'd been threatened or bribed. The military's control extended to the narrative. After the initial flying disc announcement, the weather balloon story was rolled out with precision. General Ramey's press conference featured carefully staged photos, yet the debris on display, a tattered balloon and radar target, didn't match the unearthly materials Marcel and others described. Discrepancies piled up. Why the secrecy for a balloon? Why the conflicting statements from a base known for its discipline? And what of the reports of multiple sites being secured? During the Cold War, the US government was no stranger to classified projects. Think of the Manhattan Project or the U-2 spy plane, but the intensity of the Roswell operation stood out. Some locals claimed soldiers warned them to stay silent, with one farmer recalling a stern officer saying, "You didn't see anything, and if you say you did, we'll make sure you regret it." The clampdown was swift and thorough, but it couldn't stifle the curiosity it sparked. Almost immediately, conspiracy theories began to sprout, each trying to fill the gaps in the official tale. The simplest suggested the debris was from a secret military experiment gone awry. Nearby White Sands Missile Range was a testing ground for captured German V-2 rockets and other cutting-edge tech, and the Army airfield's proximity to nuclear facilities like Los Alamos made a classified project plausible. Perhaps the flying disc was a prototype aircraft or a high-altitude surveillance device, and the balloon story was a convenient cover. In 1994, the Air Force bolstered this idea, admitting the wreckage was from Project Mogul, a program using balloons to detect Soviet nuclear tests. Mogul's balloons carried reflective foil and unusual materials, they said, which could explain the odd debris. Yet skeptics fired back. If it was Mogul, why the initial hype? Why didn't trained officers recognize it from the start? And how did a balloon account for sightings of multiple objects or tails of bodies? For many, the extraterrestrial theory was more tantalizing. The late 1940s were awash with UFO reports, and Roswell seemed to offer hard evidence of alien contact. If 3 UFOs had crashed, perhaps they carried crews, beings whose remains were whisked away to hidden labs. The government, fearing panic or eager to exploit alien tech, might have buried the truth. These early theories, born in the shadow of the incident, were just the beginning of a legend that would grow wilder with time. As we've laid the groundwork for the Roswell enigma, we've walked through the dusty fields where Mac Brazel found the debris that changed everything, heard the military's shifting explanations, and listened to witnesses who saw beyond the official story. The idea of 3 UFOs crashing, each a piece of a larger puzzle, adds a thrilling twist, suggesting an event of staggering scope. We've also dipped our toes into the conspiracy waters, from secret projects to alien visitors. And now, the narrative flows naturally into deeper mysteries. Let's explore the idea of multiple crash sites. While the standard Roswell narrative focuses on Mac Brazel's ranch, some researchers argue that the incident was far more complex, involving not 1, but 3 distinct UFO crashes scattered across the New Mexico landscape. This theory gained traction in the 1990s, fueled by new witness testimonies and a growing belief that the government's cover-up was designed to obscure a larger event. One of the most compelling accounts comes from Jim Ragsdale, a truck driver who claimed he and his girlfriend were camping near Roswell on the night of the crash. According to Ragsdale, they saw a bright object streak across the sky and slam into the ground with a thunderous impact. When they approached the site, they found a metallic, disc-shaped craft embedded in the earth, its hull still glowing from the heat of re-entry. But here's where it gets interesting. Ragsdale insisted this crash was separate from the one on Brazel's ranch, located miles away. He described the craft as smaller, with a bat-wing design, unlike the classic saucer shape. Then there's the story of Gerald Anderson, who as a child in 1947 allegedly stumbled upon a crash site while hiking with his family. Anderson claimed to have seen a silver craft wedged into a hillside, surrounded by small humanoid bodies, some dead, others alive but injured. His account, detailed in a 1991 interview, placed this site even farther from Roswell, suggesting a third location. While both Ragsdale and Anderson's stories have been met with skepticism, Ragsdale changed his tale over time, and Anderson's memory was questioned, the idea of multiple crashes persists. Could it be that 3 UFOs, perhaps part of a coordinated mission or caught in a mid-air collision, fell from the sky that night, their wreckage scattered across the desert like pieces of a cosmic puzzle? The notion of multiple crashes opens the door to a host of new questions. If there were 3 UFOs, what brought them down? Was it a simple accident, perhaps a lightning strike or a malfunction in their technology, or was it something more deliberate? Some theorists propose that the crafts were shot down by the US military, either by experimental radar systems or anti-aircraft weapons. In the late 1940s, the Army was testing powerful radar arrays in New Mexico, and there's speculation that these systems could have interfered with the UFO's navigation, causing them to crash. Others go further, suggesting that the military had developed a secret weapon capable of disabling extraterrestrial craft, a precursor to modern electromagnetic pulse technology. Imagine the scene: a fleet of UFOs buzzing over sensitive military installations like Los Alamos or White Sands, only to be targeted and brought down in a display of terrestrial might. It's a tantalizing idea, but it raises another question. If the US had the capability to down alien ships, why keep it secret? Wouldn't such a victory be trumpeted as a show of strength during the Cold War? Perhaps the answer lies in what was recovered from the wrecks. Technology so advanced that it had to be hidden away, studied in secret, and used to leapfrog the Soviets in the race for global dominance. This brings us to one of the most enduring conspiracy theories surrounding Roswell: the idea that the US government reverse-engineered alien technology from the crashed UFOs, using it to fuel the technological boom of the late 20th century. Proponents of this theory point to the rapid advancements in fields like aviation, computing, and materials science in the decades following Roswell. The development of the transistor in 1947, the integrated circuit in the 1950s, and the stealth aircraft of the 1980s are often cited as suspiciously timed breakthroughs. Could these innovations have been seeded by alien knowledge? In our 3 UFO scenario, each craft could have offered a different technological treasure trove. Perhaps the saucer held propulsion systems that inspired anti-gravity research, while the triangular craft contained stealth capabilities later seen in the F-117 Nighthawk. The cylindrical object might have carried advanced computing or energy systems, its secrets unlocked in hidden labs. This theory gained a high-profile advocate in Colonel Philip J. Corso, a former Army intelligence officer, who, in his 1997 book, The Day After Roswell, claimed to have overseen the distribution of alien artifacts to private industry. Corso alleged that technologies like fiber optics, night vision, and Kevlar were direct results of this reverse engineering effort. "We took what we found and started seeding them into our RD labs," he wrote. "It was like a giant leap in time." Skeptics dismiss Corso's claims as fiction, noting inconsistencies in his story and a lack of corroborating evidence. Yet, the idea persists, fueled by the secrecy surrounding Area 51 and other classified facilities, where, some believe, the real work on alien tech continues to this day. But what of the beings who piloted these crafts? If 3 UFOs crashed, did they carry crews? And if so, what became of them? The stories of alien bodies recovered from Roswell are among the most sensational and controversial elements of the saga. Glenn Dennis, the mortician we met earlier, wasn't the only one to speak of small, gray-skinned humanoids. In 1995, a grainy film surfaced, purporting to show an autopsy of an alien from the Roswell crash. The alien autopsy footage, produced by Ray Santilli, captivated the world, airing on television and sparking heated debate. The being on the table had a large head, almond-shaped eyes, and 6 fingers on each hand, matching the classic description of a gray alien. Santilli claimed the film was smuggled out of military archives, but experts quickly debunked it as a hoax, crafted with special effects and props. Santilli later admitted it was a reconstruction, though he insisted it was based on genuine footage. Despite the fraud, the autopsy film tapped into a deep well of belief that the government had recovered and hidden alien bodies. In our expanded narrative, with 3 crashes, there could have been multiple beings, perhaps of different species or ranks. Imagine a scenario where the saucer carried pilots, the triangle scouts or warriors, and the cylinder scientists or diplomats. Each group might have been on a distinct mission: exploration, reconnaissance, or even first contact, only to meet a tragic end in the desert. The military, faced with this unprecedented situation, would have scrambled to contain the evidence, spiriting the bodies away to secure facilities like Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, where, according to legend, they remain to this day. The government's response to Roswell has been a study in contradiction and evasion. For decades, the official stance was simple. It was a weather balloon, end of story. But as public interest reignited in the 1970s and 80s, fueled by books and TV specials, the Air Force felt compelled to address the growing conspiracy theories. In 1994, they released a report admitting that the weather balloon was actually a top-secret Project Mogul balloon, designed to detect Soviet nuclear tests. Mogul's balloons carried radar reflectors and other equipment that could explain the strange debris, they said. But the report didn't satisfy everyone. After all, it still didn't account for the multiple crash sites or the tales of alien bodies. So, in 1997, the Air Force issued another report, this time addressing the claims of recovered beings. The aliens, they explained, were likely crash test dummies used in high-altitude parachute tests in the 1950s. Witnesses, they argued, had conflated the dates, mistaking dummies for extraterrestrials. This explanation drew ridicule. How could people mistake dummies for small, gray aliens with large heads? The Air Force's attempts to close the case only seemed to widen the credibility gap. In our 3 UFO scenario, the Mogul explanation might cover one crash, but what about the others? Were there multiple Mogul balloons in the air that night? Or is the government still holding back the full truth? The lack of transparency has only fueled suspicion, leading some to believe that Roswell was just the tip of the iceberg, a glimpse into a vast, hidden world of UFO encounters and government cover-ups. Enter the Men in Black. No discussion of Roswell would be complete without mentioning these enigmatic figures, who, according to legend, appear after UFO sightings to intimidate witnesses into silence. Dressed in black suits, with pale skin and emotionless faces, the Men in Black are said to be government agents, or perhaps something more otherworldly, tasked with suppressing the truth. In Roswell, stories abound of strange men visiting witnesses, warning them not to speak of what they saw. Mac Brazel, after his interrogation, reportedly told his family he'd been threatened by military personnel. "They told me it would be best if I didn't say anything," he allegedly said. Other witnesses, like Sheriff Wilcox's family, claimed they were harassed by mysterious men who rifled through their home, searching for debris Brazel had left behind. In the 1990s, researcher Timothy Green Beckley collected tales of men in black visiting Roswell locals, sometimes decades after the incident, as if to remind them to stay quiet. One particularly eerie account comes from a woman named Miriam Bush, who worked at the Roswell Base Hospital. According to her family, she saw alien bodies in the morgue and was later visited by 2 men in black who warned her never to speak of it. She died under mysterious circumstances soon after. Are the men in black real, or are they a product of paranoia and urban legend? In our narrative, they could be the enforcers of the cover-up, ensuring that the truth about the 3 UFOs remains buried. Their presence adds a layer of menace to the story, suggesting that the stakes of Roswell are higher than we imagine. As the years passed, Roswell's legend only grew, seeping into every corner of popular culture. The incident inspired countless books, movies, and TV shows, from The X-Files to Independence Day, where the crash saucer is hidden at Area 51. Roswell became shorthand for UFOs and government secrecy, a symbol of the belief that we're not alone, and that those in power know it. The town itself embraced its extraterrestrial fame, opening the International UFO Museum and Research Center in 1992, which draws thousands of visitors each year. The annual Roswell UFO Festival, complete with alien costumes and parades, celebrates the mystery while boosting the local economy. But beyond the kitsch, Roswell has become a pilgrimage site for believers and skeptics alike, a place where the line between fact and fiction blurs. In our expanded tale, the museum could house artifacts from all 3 crashes, debris, photos, and eyewitness sketches, each piece a clue to the larger puzzle. The festival might feature panels on the multiple crash theory, with researchers debating the evidence and sharing new discoveries. Roswell's transformation from a sleepy desert town to a global icon reflects the enduring power of the unknown, the human need to look up at the stars and wonder, are we alone? Yet, for all the fascination, there are those who seek to debunk the Roswell myth. Skeptics argue that the entire incident can be explained by a combination of misidentification, exaggeration, and Cold War paranoia. The debris, they say, was indeed from Project Mogul, a classified program that the military couldn't disclose at the time. The stories of alien bodies are dismissed as hoaxes or confabulations, products of a culture obsessed with science fiction. Carl Flock, a former CIA officer turned UFO researcher, concluded in his 2001 book that Roswell was much ado about nothing, a case of ordinary events spun into extraordinary tales. Other critics point to inconsistencies in witness testimonies, the lack of physical evidence, and the financial motives of those who profit from the UFO industry. In the case of 3 crashes, skeptics would argue that the idea is even more far-fetched. How could the military cover up 3 separate incidents without a single leak? Yet, believers counter that the very absence of evidence is evidence of a cover-up, a circular logic that keeps the mystery alive. The debate rages on, with each side entrenched in their views, and Roswell remains a litmus test for one's belief in the extraordinary. As we near the end of our journey, let's consider the broader implications of the Roswell incident. If 3 UFOs did crash in 1947, what does that say about our place in the universe? Are we being visited by beings from other worlds? And if so, why? Some theorists propose that the crashes were part of a deliberate plan, an attempt at first contact gone wrong, or a warning from an advanced civilization. Others suggest that the UFOs were time machines or interdimensional craft, their origins not from distant stars, but from parallel realities. In this light, Roswell becomes more than a historical curiosity. It's a gateway to rethinking everything we know about reality. The government's secrecy, then, could be seen as a protective measure, shielding humanity from truths too shattering to comprehend. Or perhaps it's simpler, a tale of human error, fear, and the eternal quest for power. Whatever the case, Roswell challenges us to question authority, to seek the truth, and to embrace the mystery of the unknown. In closing, the story of Roswell is a tapestry woven from threads of fact, fiction, and the spaces in between. Whether you believe in alien visitors, government conspiracies, or simply the power of a good story, there's no denying that Roswell has left an indelible mark on our collective imagination. Over these continuous paragraphs, We've explored the incident from every angle, from the dusty ranch where it all began to the global phenomenon it became. We've imagined a world where 3 UFOs crashed, each carrying its own secrets, and we've followed the trail of those secrets through the decades. But the ultimate truth remains elusive, buried beneath layers of time, denial, and perhaps deliberate obfuscation. As we leave the desert behind, we're left with more questions than answers, but maybe that's the point. The search for truth is a journey, not a destination, and Roswell is a reminder that some mysteries are meant to endure. Thank you for joining us on this epic exploration. If you've enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think happened in Roswell? Was it a weather balloon, a secret project, or something from beyond the stars? The conversation continues, and we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep looking up. The truth is out there.